It's episode 10 of Whole Lot of Wolves season 6. It's Paul with you this week. I've got Danny in Baltimore on the socials.
Good evening.
I've got Alex in New York producing.
Hey there.
And it's been an international week. So, Danny, let's kick off. Could you give us some of the highlights from our players who featured on their travels this past week?
Yeah, that's right. And it was a bit of a weird one because obviously I think the club put out that this is the record number of internationals traveling, which, won't be music to most people's ears. I think we'd all rather have them back with Vitor. But, there's obviously a certain point of pride in having all these players who are selected for their national teams. But on the other hand, we do have a sort of mix of games in this window, which was kind of interesting to follow, that I've been sort of following it a bit more recently. And so some of them were doing World Cup qualifiers. Some of them were doing friendlies because their teams had already qualified. And then there are various sort of asterisks. Enzo Gonzalez at the U20 World Cup and Fer Lopez with Spain under 21, which was Euro qualifiers. So there were sort of like technically 4 different types of games potentially happening at any given time. But a lot of the action was in Africa because obviously we have on loan we have Giga, but then there's Chachua. There's also Agbadu, who plays for Ivory Coast, and Orokodare, who plays for Nigeria. And of course, Munetsi and Trewa both are starters for Zimbabwe. Take from that what you will. So some of them were really in the hunt, and in particular, Ivory Coast needed to sort of solidify their position in their group, and they did. They are now qualified for the World Cup. The big action was with Tolo's Nigeria, who really, I think, had a pretty underwhelming World Cup qualifying campaign so far, and were, I think, sitting in 3rd in their group. So the top team gets qualified automatically. The second team has a chance to be in the playoffs, but you have to be among the best second place teams. But the thing that blew their group wide open was that South Africa were docked 3 points for having fielded an ineligible player in a previous game. So that sort of opened everything up and allowed them in. So I won't go through all the permutations because there was a crazy ESPN article with like scenarios where, depending on the number of away goals scored, we might be down to like flipping a coin sort of scenarios. But anyway, the upshot of all of it is that they completely clinched that second place spot and being in the playoffs among second place finishers by winning 4-0 on the final day against Benin, who had been on top of the group for a while, which was kind of a pretty spectacular performance, especially by Osimhen, who scored a hat trick. Tolu came on and was instrumental in their final goal, and sort of a big achievement for them to be part of that. I think they have a pretty decent chance to go through, but they're going to have to go through a playoff with other African teams and then play like whatever the intercontinental playoff is. I guess it's with maybe someone from CONCACAF. I'm not really sure. That's way far down the line. I'm not bothering to look into it. So that was sort of all the excitement in Africa. And then just to talk about the friendlies that went on around, obviously people may have seen on Twitter, the main Wolves account put out that Santi Bueno captained his Uruguay side for the first time. They were bringing in new people. Again, these are friendlies because Uruguay have already qualified, but they're trying to find other leaders ostensibly, and so he got to captain his side in the second game that they played. And then in which strangely was played in Malaysia. I'm not really sure if that's for money-making reasons or whatever. And then also in Southeast Asia, Brazil were playing Korea and Japan. So obviously they were in Seoul first and then Tokyo, and Korea had 2 games at home in Korea. And the interesting part about that, I guess, is that Hwang didn't play a single minute. In the first game, Brazil versus Korea, Andre got on at the end, but João Gomez didn't, and nobody made it on in their second game, neither Andre nor João Gomez. I think people were really looking for them to have, some kind of impact or time there, since they've been looked over in the past. But Ancelotti seems really to prefer Casemiro and Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton in his midfield, which I got to say is a little bit disappointing, especially with Casemiro being 50 years old or whatever. So a little bit frustrating there, but as always, they are just friendlies, and I do want to caution. I think I said this like about a dozen times on Twitter when people were asking me because I was following these things. Or it's like really not worth it to like put a lot of stock in international games generally, and even less so with friendlies. So I wouldn't read too deeply into that. I have seen some rumors that He-Chan may have been injured the entire time, which obviously will impact, our thoughts about the lineups for this weekend. But other than that, some varied action around the globe, but it was mostly teams that Wolves aren't involved with. Like Krejci had to play against the Faroe Islands, and Faroe Islands have been on a tear and actually upset them. So on the wrong end of that one. And other stories like Cape Verde being the second smallest team after Iceland to ever qualify for a World Cup. The Blue Sharks have done it somehow. They've come top of their group in Africa and are going to the World Cup. So lots of exciting things, but most of the Wolves stuff is pretty much what we expected.
Awesome. So got that international break out the way and onto this weekend, previewing Saturday's trip to Sunderland next. And to help with the opposition preview, we have long-time Black Cats fan Jeramie Westbay joining us from the Washington, D.C. area. Hi, Jeramie. How's it going?
Hey, good evening, Paul. It's going well. Nice to see you again, and glad to be here.
Likewise. So, firstly, Jeramie, tell everyone why Sunderland.
I get that question a lot. So many choices. But I'm a firm believer that nobody chooses their club. Your club chooses you. And I think my situation is no different. Being an American sports fan of my advancing age, there wasn't a lot of exposure to European football. And so it was the 2010 World Cup when we had pretty high expectations for the U.S. team. And so watching Tim Howard and Landon Donovan, and I was aware of Manchester United, but didn't know what even league they played in. And so they kept saying Premier League, Premier League. And so a quick Wikipedia search, learning about the Premier League, seeing relegation and promotion, which is a foreign concept for American fans. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then looked at the list of the clubs, and Sunderland stood out to me because at the time I was actually living in a very small town of Sunderland here in the United States. And so I was like, well, let me research this. And so doing some further down the Wikipedia rabbit hole and seeing that the history of the club for the first 50 years of the last century, Sunderland apparently were one of the great clubs in England. And then fell on pretty hard times for the latter half of the century, and around 2010 back in the Premier League and starting to rise again, which kind of mirrored the story of the baseball team that I follow, the Red Sox in the United States, who kind of had a similar track. So just a couple of short weeks later after the World Cup, they're playing their first match of the year, and so I was able to watch the Manchester City match online, which was new at the time and streaming. And I knew enough to know that we were underdogs. Manchester City starting to kind of rise as a powerful club. And it was 0-0 going into the 90th minute. And there was a cross that came in for Darren Bent, and he got fouled in the penalty box and converted the penalty kick. And I said, that's it, I'm in. I don't even know much what's going on, but I like it. And it was exciting. And I've really been a huge supporter ever since.
So we go back about 10 years talking about our respective teams to times where both were kicking around in the doldrums of lower league games in England. So can you give us like a potted history of those 10 years since, really around that time of the Sunderland Till I Die series and onwards into this season?
Yeah, so little did I know that that was sort of the heyday of being a Sunderland supporter. Not long after, I mean, we had Darren Bent and then signed Asamoah Gyan, who had just knocked the United States out of that World Cup. And so we had two world-class strikers, and man, I thought life was going to be fantastic. But it was very shortly after, that Darren Bent left, obviously, for Villa. Asamoah Gyan went to Saudi Arabia for a bunch of money. Funny how the Saudi Arabia theme comes back to the Northeast. But And then Steve Bruce really struggled, and so we started to really fall. And David Moyes put the finishing touches on us and got us relegated. So he'll long live in infamy, certainly in the Northeast with Sunderland fans who really seemed like from day one was just said we don't have enough talent here. It's not my fault, and just right from the gate we fell into disaster and got relegated, and then double relegated, not just the championship, but right down to League One. And the American owner at the time seemed clearly lost, and so he sold the club, and really fell on quite hard times and being in League One for several seasons, as I think was kind of chronicled by the Netflix series. But Alex Neil came into the club, and a new ownership, right, led by Stewart, I think was his name, and from as an American watching, I felt like he was bringing good energy to the club. I think I remember famously they said at the press conference that the piss take in Sunderland is over. No more players coming here just to enjoy. No more loanees from Manchester or London coming here and taking it easy. We're going to be serious about who we bring in, and it felt like it changed it. There was a lot made of having the fans come in to actually change out the seats, right? The seats had gotten old and turned, I think, famously pink instead of being red. And so they came in, the fans came in. It was a big community building event. So I felt actually rather positive, and things seemed to look better. But as we started to even face relegation out of League One, the fans turned on the ownership and essentially chased them out of town. And then Kyril Louis Dreyfus of Marseille fame, his family owning that club, came in, and it's really been a complete fantasy ever since. Alex Neil got us promoted out of League One. And they really started this youth movement, and I think clubs talk about it, bringing in young players, but and maybe it's just Sunderland's history, but they would bring in young players, but then they don't trust them, they don't play them. Like, well, if you don't have the experience, you're not going to. Well, how do you get experience if you don't get them on the pitch? And so our leadership, starting with Alex Neil, and then as it's turned to Reggie Labrie, has really, I mean, Joe Bellingham last season, Chris Rigg, who was, I think, 16 years old to start the season, getting significant, they were getting significant playing time. Mayenda on the front line, Dan Ballard at the back, Anthony Patterson in goal, all young, many of them locally bred players that were starters and got heavy minutes. And we rode their backs to promotion. So that's been exciting to see. And so now here we are, kind of a little bit of fantasy land to be here in the Premier League and picking up points, no less. It's I don't even know what to believe about it. It's pretty incredible.
So like the Midlands, a big thing in the Northeast is those local rivalries. So what's the period been like living in the shadow of Newcastle, especially following that influx of Saudi oil money?
Yeah, I think it's things go up and down. And I know before we got relegated, we beat them 6 times in a row. So okay, we had our moment in the sun, I think, of having the best of Newcastle for a few years, I guess 3 straight years where they couldn't win a match. So we enjoyed that. And then to see the Saudis come in and buy a lot of conversation around, what do they call it, sport washing, right? That the Saudis are buying these clubs to try to improve their own global reputation as it is. And I think I do, as much as, the horse punchers have had some tough times and not covered themselves in glory. I'll never forget that. That's amazing that whole thing occurred. I'm sure if you're a Newcastle supporter, it's got to be tough knowing that this is your ownership, and they're probably not the most reputable folks in the business. So I do have some empathy for those fans, and I'm glad that our ownership seems to be he's a young 27-year-old that seems to do things the right way, invest in the community, and bring in the young players and build the program the right way. So I'm happy to be a Sunderland fan in that regard. I know Newcastle supporters, bleed for their team as much as anyone, and the Northeast is a special place when it comes to their football and how important it is to them. So I wish them, the best in that regard. But I'm sure they would rather that the money came from somewhere else.
So promoted via the playoffs, you were probably the busiest of all the promoted teams in the summer with a flurry of transfer activity, and it certainly seems you want to reverse that trend of teams going straight back down. How's that transition really shaped your starting 11 now, and what immediate impact do you think it has had on that start to the season?
It's hard to know what to say about it because it's so incredible, the transition. We had, again, these Sunderland born and raised players. You got to know them all. Dan Ballard with the header to get us into the final was incredible. And then to obviously win a playoff where we were down 2-0 momentarily until VAR brought one of the goals back and gave us an opportunity to get in that game. And you wonder, right, when you go into the Premier League, how many of these players are going to stick around and be a part of the future. And it seemed like every other day we're signing somebody new for 15 million pounds or 18 million pounds. And to be honest, didn't recognize a lot of these names. And it's an entirely new squad. But I think that the centerpiece of that has got to be Granit Xhaka, who's really been a rock, really protecting the back line, marshaling the forces, and also coaching up the younger players. I think there's a story that's come out that Chris Rigg, who was the 16-year-old, who's an incredible talent, but apparently being a little bit lazy in training, and Granit was not going to have that. And he made sure he knew what the standard was and how we needed to operate in the Premier League. And he has been, I think, probably our most important signing. But followed by in defense, Mukulele has been huge, and Omar Alderete have really shored up the defense in an incredible way. I think the expectation was that you get this many new players in at once, and it's going to take time for them to learn how to play together. So my thought was, it's going to be the holiday season before we start to get some momentum. So to see them play so well out of the box is sort of inexplicable, and I'll take it. But it feels like a little bit of a mirage. So I don't know if it's going to continue. The Sunderland fan in me is telling me not to get carried away because darker clouds must be on the horizon somewhere. We're not allowed to have nice things for sure. So it remains to be seen. But clearly, they've brought in a lot of talent. And Reggie Labrie has done an incredible job of getting them to play together, and so we'll see. We'll see how their season progresses, but absolutely floored that we've done so well so far.
What can we expect on Saturday by way of how you'll shape up and approach the game, particularly with reference to you probably being the favourite, certainly at home?
Yeah, don't say that. I mean, so we play a 4-3-3, and I think the strength so far has been that defense, not conceding very many goals. We very much play, I think, maybe typical for a promoted club where we play a lot of defense, and we're happy to give up possession, keep our squad behind the ball, and then try to catch teams on the break. And I think that's been very successful for us. I think we went to Manchester United last weekend, maybe feeling a bit overconfident because I felt like we got away from playing that way and tried to play a more possession game and match them. And Manchester United just got behind us and got some early goals, and that was that. So I think at home against obviously your Wolves squad that has had sort of the opposite type of start. So keep in mind, we haven't played any of the top 5 clubs. No Liverpool, Man United, Man City, Arsenal. We've had a nice, pretty easy start. I want to say maybe not easy, but we've played against clubs that give us a chance to get started. And so West Ham, who's clearly struggling, we came out of the gates and beat them 3-0, which was amazing. We caught Forest while they're struggling, and picked up a couple other draws. And so I think we've been a little bit lucky. And I think even some of our wins, we've had the rub of the green so far. Rick, sincerely, we've gotten a little bit lucky, but we're playing good defense. So if they come out and they play the counter-attacking style that's been what's helped them and be successful, we have a chance. But honestly, I think luck runs out at some point. And if I'm a Wolves club where the class is permanent, I think that at some point you guys will step forward. And this is the type of game, quite honestly, where you're right. We expect to be the favorites. We're at home. You expect to bounce back. But I also wonder if maybe United found us out a little bit and maybe has the blueprint for how to beat us. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Wolves pick up a result this weekend.
All right. Finally, Jeramie, just overall your expectations now for the rest of the season.
Well, I'm going to hang my hat on the one stat that has been popularized, is that no team with 11 points after 6 games has ever been relegated. So we'll touch wood on that one, that's the case this season. And obviously, we'll be very happy just to not get relegated. I'd love to see us with a top 15 finish, but I would be very surprised if, to see anything like the top 10. You still wonder if the squad, and Wilson Isidore has been sort of our talisman and a goal poacher, and he's a super fan favorite. I think he's fantastic. If he can stay healthy, that's the other problem. In midfield, we've already lost Habib Diarra and Sadiki are out for this game. Sadiki's that box-to-box midfielder that covers every blade of grass. He's not going to play. So now we're going to be reliant on some of those youngsters in midfield. So we're a little bit of a thin squad, right? So if we don't stay healthy, we're going to struggle. So hopefully we can gather a few points in the front here and hang on. But I think it's going to be a struggle long term. We're just not as talented as most of the clubs in the Premier League, unfortunately.
Well, we will do this again for the reverse fixture, see where we are at that point. Thanks for coming on, Jeramie.
No, my pleasure. And I heard on the last podcast with your Newcastle a friend that somebody's going to be supporting Sunderland when they play. So hopefully you guys do, and look forward to talking to you guys again. Best of luck to you this weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Cheers.
That was Jeramie Westbay telling us everything about Sunderland. So it's quite interesting when you get that catch up after all these years, really, and you're learning about these teams that you knew so well and the transitions and everything. So be an interesting game on Saturday for sure. So on our side of things, guys, based on that international week travel, everything that we can think about, what would you like to take a guess at in terms of shape and starting 11 on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the big question has to still be, does he stick with a back four or does he go to a back three? I know that the popular answer, online is that we have to stick with a back four. It just looks so much better. And I agree with it to an extent, but I think that we genuinely did look much better at Spurs after switching back to a back three. I think we held our own during the first part in a back four, but we weren't creating a whole hell of a lot. We were just weathering it. And I think for most of us, that was enough if we could just keep it tight. But we created much, much more with a back three against Spurs. And I just wonder, how we get the best out of Strand Larson. Going back to some of the international break stuff, I'm glad that João and Andre have had a nice rest. They should have, returned home relatively early and not having played a ton of minutes. And it sounds like their midfield is going to be weak, but the question remains, how do we get the most out of our high impact players, our players who can actually change a game? And we have to get the most out of them. We also have to get the most out of Strand Larson, assuming that, he's fit to start, which I don't have any reason to believe he isn't. But if he's starting, he has looked, it seems more dangerous when we've had three at the back, even if there are some other sacrifices. And I'm a little bit concerned at this point. He got to start for Norway in their second game because they had already qualified. It was a friendly, I believe, the second game. And so they were resting Holland and Sorloth, and he didn't do a whole hell of a lot in that game against New Zealand. And it's just a friendly. And I want to caution people to not read too much into these things, but I think we maybe take it for granted that he's going to be fit and firing the whole season and, producing at the rate that he was last season. But we haven't seen that yet, and we need to. One
omission strategically from what we picked up on was Sean Arias not doing anything with Colombia. So Alex is in from the start, surely. Could you see a two up top with Arias and Strand Larson or Tolo maybe?
I could see that. I don't know. I'm concerned about both of those players, the productivity of both of them, for reasons Danny just said with Strand Larson and Arias, whether you want to cut him a break or not, for being mid-season and then playing in the Club World Cup and then making the transfer. He has looked better, But that being said, he's still been disappointing. Like I defy anyone to disagree with the fact that if Wang missed some of the chances that Arias has missed over the past couple of weeks, it would be like apocalyptic in terms of the reaction that you would get. That's not to say I don't have faith in him, writing that, but I just think you need more from that player. Like, he was the most exciting signing. Whether it's in a top 2 or a top 3 this week, I'm not really sure. I'm still torn on I feel like the defensive shape will dictate everything, and I'm still honestly I don't have a strong opinion either way, which I wish I did. Like I have no conviction, kind of like Vitor. Like halfway through a game, he can just lack that conviction and just make that decision. I guess if they were to go to the back 5, do you think we'd finally see a non-Agbadou back 5? Like, would it be a Mosquera, Santi, and Krejci back 5? With Agbadou on the bench? I mean, I don't know. I still don't see how, even if you go back and add another center back into this lineup, how you could justify putting Agbadou in, regardless of what he's done for his country during the break, and he hasn't been there training. So that's another setback. It's like even more distracted than he already has been.
Yeah, it definitely seems that there's no real clear either formation or guaranteed starters within that formation now that you can start to pick a first 11 from. So it'll be interesting when that team sheet gets revealed on Saturday morning. So we will do prediction time. Let's go alphabetically then. Alex, you first.
So I haven't predicted a Wolves victory yet this season, but Jeramie got me kind of excited. It's like one of those scenarios where like Wolves aren't going to go a whole season without winning a game, and also like something's got to give with Sunderland. So, and also I feel weirdly better about playing on the road for reasons that we've discussed on this podcast in the past. I want to go 2-1 Wolves. Let's do it. 3 points on the board.
Nice. Danny?
Oh, this is so dangerous because Alex stole my score prediction, and somehow it makes me feel even worse to predict a win when it's also the exact same way that Alex said. It feels too good to be true. Whatever. I'll just go with it. So we'll go Sunderland 1, Wolves 2.
Nice. I'm going for a repeat of a prediction from a few weeks ago about something that never happens. And this was based off of what Jeramie said in terms of setup and some of the players that they're missing. So I'm thinking we might cancel each other out and it's that 0-0 draw.
Oh my God.
But everyone, don't forget there's still time to travel and make those plans if you want to hit up the big Midwest meetup that's happening for Saturday's game. So that had a really nice write-up on the official Wolves website this week. So if you have some interest, if you're looking to travel and connect but you don't know who to reach out to, please contact us via the usual channels and we will make that connection.
No Stupid Questions is brought to you by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. Whether you're toasting some Vino de Vitor or winding down after a day of work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of wine country with each sip. Now at esfuerzowines.com, you can use the promo code VITOR, that's VITOR, at checkout to receive a 30% discount off your order. And don't forget to try the special edition 1-pack wines to show your passion and support for Wolves with each glass. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their product responsibly and in moderation.
It's that time of the show where you, the listener, can ask us anything related to Wolverhampton Wanderers and get involved in the show. There's a number of ways that you can do so. You can get us on X at WLW Pod is the show's handle. You can email the show hello@wholelotofwolves.com, or for those who are watching live on our stream on YouTube, you can just go ahead and throw a comment in the the chat, and we can answer your question on the spot. So let's start with a question from Stu on X, who says, after Sunday's abomination, should Wolves versus Burnley, which is following the Sunderland match, be played in America in retaliation for the sporting war crime of England hosting the Broncos and Jets? I have to say, it was an international break. I can't even use the excuse of there was Premier League football to watch, and I still had zero interest in watching Jets Broncos. I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but
I rarely watch American football anymore anyway. And I turned it on just because there was some activity in the group chat that I'm in with the aforementioned Stu. And so, I was curious, threw it on. I'm not sure I lasted more than 15 minutes. So I'm ready for this to be done. I'll find some international game that's happening right now.
I did have to look twice at that question and think, well, who were the Wolves playing last weekend? Because abomination has been the only thing that has made me think of the Wolves this season. So to see another team referenced in that same frame was, in a weird way, quite reassuring. It's not just us; it happens to other people as well. But
yeah,
damn, if you have both of those teams, geez.
Yeah, pour one out for our poor friends who are fans of both Wolves and the Jets. Not just Stu, but I think David Hunt on Twitter, who's the stadium announcer, and I believe that there have been 2 or 3 more that have come out of the woodwork since Stu announced himself on there, and woe be to them. I mean, not like our co-host Josh doesn't know about some sports pain. So.
It is pretty impressive, though, that between them, they collectively have 13 games played and no wins at all. That's really, really rough. I will say, I was drinking the Justin Fields Kool-Aid after the first game of the season. I have a little bit of a soft spot for the Jets due to some family members who are Jet fans, but even still, I took the Sunday off until the real action started at 1 p.m. Interesting though, because there will be European football played over here. It's I think Miami is getting some at least a La Liga match.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is crazy. So I know Stu was joking, and it was more a reference to the Jets, but the same way we send like the Jaguars, who are actually decent, over to England all the time now. The Wolves are bad enough that they would be like the first team nominated to come over to America. They'd be like, who gives a shit about their ticket gauge at Molineux? They can't even sell games out anyway anymore. General sale all the time. Come on. So maybe we got that going for us if the Premier League takes the bait. I don't know if I could see it, but
don't give them any ideas.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs that it's come to that actual league games are coming over to the States. I think it's different with the NFL, but anyway, we can move on. Drew, frequent guest on the show, and Drew Freakin on X says, John Arias, David Muller-Wolf, Chachua, Fur Lopez, which other Premier League squads would these players get into, not just make the bench, but actually contribute? I'm struggling to find one that immediately jumps to mind. Is that crazy?
Drew's really been on a tear of asking some similar questions around. I think he's being a little bit unfair to these players. I do think that some of them are sort of victims of our current situation, which is like we've talked about. An issue of recruitment. I think we're looking at these players very differently. If we replace Semedo with Chachua, but like the starting 11 is largely the same or the same strength, I think we're looking at him as an exciting, young, very fast player that we're like looking forward to watch every week. So like I still fall back to the like we have not recruited well, and these players may be like part of that individually, but they can't help how they are part of it, like collectively. And to answer the specific question, I won't say that all of them. I think you could definitely make a case for Arias and Chachua both being starters for at least some teams in the bottom half I haven't watched enough of other teams to say exactly where or how. But I think that they have enough quality or, specialized skills in the case of Chachua and his speed. And he's shown himself to be a decent defender, to be fair. I think could find their way. I haven't seen enough David Mahler-Wolf, and it hasn't been great, but I also think we haven't seen a ton of him. It's funny, I just said, don't read too much in the international breaks, but I do wonder, this guy's starting for Norway, who are not the greatest team, but are a decent team. And so it just makes you wonder, is it something that we're doing wrong? And by we, of course, I mean them, but Vitor, or just again, squad building issues. So I'm not really sure with them. I think we can all see Fer Lopez's undeniable ability and potential, but I don't know that makes him a starter on another team. I think he probably has, a similar role as he does at Wolves, with other teams, in the bottom half, where he very well could be a decent player on them, but not necessarily a week in, week out starter.
I thought about this today, and it was reinforced with what Jeramie said actually about some of their signings, that often it's us looking to the likes of Sunderland and those players that they were picking up in that 15 to 18 million pound range. And if it was those types of players mentioned, you'd probably be looking quite enviously at them. Or the flip side of it, it's these types of players that are likes of Brentford sign, again, similar amount, but it's not record breaking, kind of goes under the radar, but then all of a sudden they have a really good start to the season, or they start to find the back of the net or get a lot of assists, and the chatter builds on them, and all of a sudden it's, well, where did they come from? And it's having that really cute transfer strategy, nurturing players, bringing them through, maybe gradually picking up these gems. It really seems that Wolves miss a distinct trick in being able to do that, or we haven't been able to do it for a very long time. And by that, it was the likes of Johnny Otto when we signed him, who was relatively unknown. All of a sudden he's coming in as a stellar starting left back in the Premier League. So it doesn't feel like we've got that to our strategy anymore, which is quite telling, and obviously detriment to the starting 11 and the squad, that you start to that quality is really whittled away.
Yeah, and even if I don't think it's that Wolves don't have the means to do what Sunderland do. They just seem like they make the choice constantly to sign players who haven't played in the league, which it's not because they can't afford them. Some of those players, yes, there is a bit of a Premier League tax, but I don't know. I just can't believe that a team like Sunderland can sign so many experienced players that Wolves won't even give a sniff. Granit Xhaka was the butt of so many jokes for so long during his time at Arsenal. I think he was the captain and lost the captaincy after he had an altercation with a fan.
Yep.
He goes and has an unbeaten season at Leverkusen, just wins the Bundesliga, bringing clear experience and leadership to that club, and then comes back and seems like he's having a nice time at Sunderland. Wolves would never look at a player like that. We wouldn't even get excited about a player like that, but we also very much need a player like that. Simon Adingra played over 30 games for Brighton last year. That's a great signing. Meanwhile, we're getting guys who, again, we're just constantly hoping they could adjust to this league. And it'd be nice just to, this is the Josh Brownhill thing all over again. It's would he save our season right now? Would we still be bottom of the table? Probably. But could he be any worse than what we've seen? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have to go back to recruitment, where it's just it sort of lays bare this whole recruitment policy and transfer strategy. I mean, I guess to bring up more current events, there was a report in Italy that Domenico Tetti could be going to Juventus. He doesn't seem to be top choice, but as sporting director, and it's wow, I love to fail up in that way, but also what have we actually accomplished in the transfer window? And which isn't to denigrate any of these particular players, the ones in the question, or any of the other ones that we signed. I think many of them have shown certain qualities that are good. I'm sure that they're decent people, but like, it doesn't feel like we've accomplished anything in terms of reinforcement, in terms of like strengthening, in terms of replacing even the players who have been lost. And then these kind of like, it feels like we're completely cut off. Like, it was one thing in the past where thought we were unearthing gems that like, oh, Mendes can hook us up with these players who like we really shouldn't have access to, but we can convince them of, the utility of joining Wolves. But now, instead of feeling like, oh, this is an extra market that we can exploit that other people can't in this way, now it's like we're completely cut off from any market that's not Mendes or whatever it is that Teddy brings us. I still don't know. But like, yeah, there's all these markets that might, bear fruit in various ways, and we just don't seem to have any interest in them whatsoever.
Yeah. And I can't believe I didn't know that Teti was linked to Juventus. I love the term "failing up." That is like the extreme example of that. I don't know what he has brought to this club so far in his limited time here. Yeah, it's annoying because it's not even like the players' fault themselves. Like for Lopez, like there's many teams that I think even in the Premier League that for Lopez would be a sensible signing for, because like he would come off the bench every now and then. There'd be almost no expectations for him. And 2 years from now, they'd be like, oh, we signed this kid like 2 years ago with an eye on the future. And like he had the time to develop into an actual finished product that can start on a week-to-week basis in the league. Wolves just don't have that luxury of time, like because every situation is so dire. We're constantly in a relegation battle now to start the past couple of seasons. So we get desperate, and then it stunts the growth of players like that because they get one chance and then they're like just riding the bench the rest of the year. And that's what sucks. It's like, I don't know. I can't blame them. It's this, like you said, it's a situation they're thrown into. So anyway, I don't think he'd get in another EPL team and be a big contributor though, but he'd be a great sign. He'd be like one of those Brighton signings. They sign him, and 3 years from now, you'd be like, where the hell did this guy come from? Be like, he's been on Brighton for years. Like, what are you talking about? And then now he's going to Chelsea. Yeah, you'll finally get to know him in time for him to get sold to Chelsea. All right, let's finish No Stupid Questions with another question from Drew. A little bit more lighthearted. If Josh moved to the UK for work and had to leave the podcast, which by the way, he isn't here, so who's to say he's even in the US at this given moment? Would you ever consider replacing him with an Albion fan? Not naming names about what other pods may have done this.
I'd have to meet one first.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is very much the Wolves USA pod, right? Like that's Paul's vision here. Like I've never seen a single one in the United States. I don't know if any of you guys have.
I met one time in Baton Rouge of all places when I was at work, and we were just chatting about soccer, and he did the whole, I really like EPL, and I didn't want to bandwagon and pick a top 6 team, so I went down the list, and this team that was doing really well I kind of liked, and it turned out it was West Bromwich Albion. I was like, oh no.
You were so close. Just go a little further down the alphabetical list.
Yeah.
Also a real bummer that we don't have Josh on with, like, I feel like he's the only one who can credibly make a Baton Rouge joke.
Oh yeah. Sure. I got nothing there. No ammo. I'm not saying anything about, I've never been. I'm sure it's lovely, but I don't have the street cred in the South.
Back to the question as well. I've not listened to said podcast yet, so I can't really cast anything on it at this point. But I think the format's always been that Liam Keen's the interviewee talking about Wolves, so it really doesn't matter who the interviewer is. I just think we've been spoilt for so many years with Judah, and especially the dynamic he was able to form with Tim Spires and Liam Keen in more recent times as well, that made it a entertaining listen. So I think that's going to be a big adjustment more than anything, and the actual quality of quality of the content of the show per se, Wolves and everything that goes with it.
Yeah. One more question here in the chat. Joey, do you think Arias and or Larson reached 8-goal mark? Struggling to see it. In case you're wondering, many of you may know they both have 0 at the moment. One of them, 8 goals,
anyway.
seems like, league goals. Well, I guess he didn't specify if it's in all competitions or not. I'm assuming he means league goals. I still think it's doable. No?
Oh, it's absolutely doable.
Larson goes on like one nice run of it, where, like, gets a brace here, a goal in the following game. All of a sudden, it's a much different story.
Yeah, I mean, like, even just this weekend, I'll just like overly jinx things so that then no one can actually blame me for being realistic or anything. But like, Larson scoring a hat trick against a newly promoted team is not like beyond his ability. He scored 2 against West Ham, who are dire, but also like, is there like tons and tons of difference between the two teams? Like, probably not. And suddenly it feels extremely possible. But I share in Joey's pessimism right now, in that, like, I just think, especially with the back four, for whatever reason, we've looked a lot more competent overall on the pitch, but the chances have been so few and far between that I really do worry. I mean, we talked probably in the last podcast and probably the one before that about just chance creation. Not been enough of that, even in the games where we have looked pretty decent, like the last 2 games. The actual chances that we're creating are few and far between, and are often not of like particularly good quality. So yeah, I share in his concern, but I think it is eminently possible for one or both of them to reach 8 goals. I hope they do.
I think if both did, you'd probably be talking about a pretty good season in the end. So
yeah,
let's hope it happens, because I think we'd be enjoying some good times. But whether that is going to be the case, then we're going to have to quickly find out, I think.
Yeah, hopefully starting Saturday, one of them will get off the mark, or both.
I mean, I have to say, it's not a great look before we move on, that another more recent bit of news is that, supposedly Jeff Shee and Vitor are going to be meeting over January transfer plans, and who knows how that got leaked and what truth there is in it. But it's just like, it's obviously not a great look when you're still winless in the league and you're talking about what to do in January, sitting on 2 points. And just, it feels like, again, I don't want to bring up recruitment anymore, so I won't, but like, just what are we doing here, such that we are in this position where everybody is feeling nervous enough, even the people who are paid to not be nervous about it, like, are worried about how we're going to even get to January, let alone past it.
We just have our transfer windows
can't go buy another striker.
Switched
we
around.
Have 2 of them already.
Exactly. I don't know. It's the cycle of like buying impactful players in January when they're overpriced, and then doing nothing in the summer, which, whatever. If that's the only way to survive this January, then so be it, I guess. But insane. All right, that's it for No Stupid Questions. Thank you to our friends at esfuerzowines.com. Head over there, use the promo code VITOR at checkout, 30% off your order. The 1-pack wines are still available, special edition Wolves wines, cool bottle, cool right up on the label. I say you should check that out and load up on it and take advantage of our discount.
Holiday is just around the corner.
That's right. Could be a good gift for the Wolves fans in your life. They're going to need it. Like I said, buckle up, boys. It's going to be a rough winter.
Danny, let's give a little bit of coverage to the Wolves women team. How has their season started, given it's a few weeks in there?
Yeah, I feel like the last time we talked about it was sort of in the height of the controversy last season. I'm sure people have been following it somewhat, but may not be in tune with, the various off-season dealings. I think there have been some really positive changes. This is going to undercut my credibility in denigrating Jeff Shee, but I think that a lot of the moves that have been made structurally, organizationally, have been really, really astute ones, really simple stuff. Okay, I'll put it this way. They are, I wouldn't say the bare minimum, but they are what we were agitating for last season, which is that there is a lot of low-hanging fruit here, which does not cost millions and millions of pounds, but really are just sensible ways to run the women's team right now that are being done. So a lot of very sensible transfers in during the summer. I won't go through all the names, but there are a lot of familiar names for the people who follow Wolves women because they're people we've played against or people who have, been promoted with other teams over the last 2 or 3 years. And they've really been off to a great start. It's hard to put it any other way because they're still undefeated. They played our main rival this season is Burnley, who are much better funded still, and they went full time, I believe, unlike Wolves. And they played Burnley 2 or 3 weeks ago and got a 0-0 draw to that, which was seen, I think, by most of us as an extreme positive. That's one that we're sort of looking out for the whole season and hoping at least not to lose. And then subsequently, Burnley had a match postponed, so they were playing a league game while we were playing a cup game, and they found a way to draw with another team. So Wolves, with having played the same number of games, are actually leading currently by 2 points on the table. So that's hugely positive, and really, just like last season, have to focus on, continuing to put together performances against, teams we ought to win against, and making sure we don't slip up like Burnley did. They're still in 3 different cup competitions, obviously the FA Cup, the FAWNL Cup, which is their league, and then Birmingham County Cup. And the FA Cup last year was a pretty big highlight. They obviously drew Manchester United at home, which was a big, big event. Their highest attendance ever. And to get to that point, I think everybody would say that they had a pretty favorable draw. Well, that luck has run out a bit. And our first draw for the FA Cup is Rugby Borough, who sit in 3rd in our current league. So, a eminently winnable game, but much more difficult than the path that we sort of had last season. So I believe that game is coming up in a week or two. But yeah, it's a great time to get interested and get involved because they seem to have also brought on someone to do a bit more social media. So there's a lot more stuff that's just sort of out there, much easier for people from abroad to be following it. So yeah, exciting times. Looking forward to the rest of the season. Unlike with the men's team, it's I'm like so used. God, I hate saying it, but I used to really celebrate those weekends when we'd have gotten 6 points between the 2 teams. I hope that happens soon, but not holding my breath. We'll see.
That brings this week's show to an end. So thanks to Danny on the socials, Alex producing, you, our audience, as this is for you. It would be a huge favor to us in return and helping to grow the whole Lotta Wolves pack. If you can give us that 5-star review on your podcast listening platform of choice, drop us a line on there of some kind words, along with subscribing to Whole Lot of Wolves if you haven't done so yet on YouTube. Like our content there. Subscribe for those notifications of when we go live and post. All of that engagement helps us a great deal. We're going to be back next week. It will be a review of that Sunderland game and then preview another crunch clash at home to Burnley the following Sunday. So get well soon, Josh, and his $6 million man bionic new hip. And you all take care of yours this week when jumping up and down and celebrating that win while saying up the mighty Wolves.